Welcome into Riddle and the Reporter live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. You can watch us streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook live every single Saturday morning from 9 to 11. College football regular season has wrapped up. The college football playoff is set, and we are now starting to get into bowl season. We're going to be talking a little bit of Titans and everything going on, whether it's drama inside the organization, whether it's this team being 4-8 and where do they go next. We're going to be getting into their matchup with the Miami Dolphins on Monday Night Football as well. And also, Nashville Predators are red hot. The reporter Nick Keyser is going to give us all the updates on that. And to wrap things up, on today's show, we are going to have Vanderbilt football linebacker C.J. Taylor come on and join us and talk to us about everything going on with the Vanderbilt football program, where he is as a player and all these Vanderbilt players entering the transfer portal, and what does that mean for the program? So we're going to get into a lot of different stuff today, but it's overall going to be a good show. But happy Saturday, fellas. Nick, Connor, how we doing?
Good morning. Yeah, can't complain. It is the weekend. It was a fabulous morning yesterday. I've not done this in a long time, Junie, and that was produce for our fearless leader, Chase McCabe, who is now down there in Miami with Big Joe Dubin. So give them a quick shout out. They should have some fun coverage in the next few days, and they'll be down there for Monday Night Football. And then obviously we have lots of hockey this weekend, and the Preds have their second back-to-back of the season, but I'm looking forward to watching those games. And thanks to Max Hers for giving me a quick shout out on the Preds official podcast earlier, just a few minutes ago. So that was pretty fun to, be part of that Star Wars night the other night. I mean, and aside from it being a theme night, Junie, the Preds are looking really good right now. And also, the Titans obviously still making some headlines here locally as well. I know that we will get into what Teron Davenport had to even get into earlier this week as well. So excited to kind of dive into this conversation because while one team's hot, one team's still figuring it out, but there's still a lot to get into.
Yeah, no, and all in all, with the Titans, we're going to get into this. This is a tall task going up against a high-octane offense in the Miami Dolphins going down there for Monday Night Football. We know what this Titans secondary has looked like, so we're going to really kind of dive into what the Titans can do to maybe stay in this game and be somewhat relevant in this matchup. But I also kind of want to bring up a topic maybe that they might not want to, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to start off with the question of the day.
Let's do it.
Tonight is the Heisman Award ceremony that you can catch on ESPN and ABC. And in honor of this, the question of the day, and I want anybody that's listening right now to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Question of the day. Who is your favorite Heisman winner and why? I want to know. Text us here, 615, or call in and talk about maybe a memory or a game or a season that you really got into with one of the Heisman winners. 615-737-1025. Who is your favorite Heisman winner of all time? So I want to kind of get into mine. Now, obviously, as a Louisville fan,
yes,
you can naturally assume it is Lamar Jackson.
Is it not?
I mean, it is. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I loved Lamar Jackson. I love that season for Louisville, even though it didn't necessarily end the way I wanted it to. They were.
How did it end, Judy?
They, they lost to Kentucky. That was for one, and then they got smacked by LSU in some meaningless bowl because they lost to Kentucky. But either way, I'm going to kind of scratch that one out because it's no fun when you just pick your team's Heisman winner.
Sure.
So I had a few of them, man. I mean, I grew up watching a lot of college football, but I would say my favorite Heisman winner in the season that I kept up with was Robert Griffin III.
Ooh.
I loved RG3. I was a big RG3 guy when he came out, when he went to the Commanders, or I should say the Redskins at the time.
Yes.
When he went to Washington, I followed him that season, really liked what he did, how he kind of took the Redskins from a team that, I mean, they were habitual losers at the time, and actually took him to the playoffs and had a winning record. I thought that was a great player. I remember watching that Oklahoma game where it was just back and forth, and he threw a deep touchdown to win the game there late. I mean, it was awesome,
Core memory.
awesome game. But I wanted to open up to you guys. Who's your all's favorite Heisman of all time? You can also mention some honorable mentions also.
Yeah, I think, RG3 was one of my favorites to watch, especially, those days when you're outside, kind of like days like this where it's like a gloomy day and you're out in the backyard playing backyard football, and then you're going to go watch college football, which right now there's not anything on. Army and Navy will play later this afternoon as well. We will make our pick for that game. But I would say for me, going back to when I kind of first got into football, I think this was a guy that made a really big impression, especially among my friends, and that was Tim Tebow. And Tim Tebow, back in that time, for me at least, was a really good example of what an athlete should look like. And I got done watching the whole series with the Florida Gators and everything, and wow, I could not believe what the journey was like for Tim and his perspective that way. But the way that he carried himself, I thought, was a great microcosm for what an athlete should look like. But I think my second favorite would probably be I'm going to have to guess it's from 2010 or later, or at least 2015 or later.
You would be correct. You actually mentioned one of mine, Marcus Mariota.
Okay.
As a Titans fan, he was.
But was he your favorite guy in
was he
college?
yours?
Like, you had to have really followed him in college.
I specifically remember, I think it was the 4th grade. We were all really excited for that national championship against Ohio State just because Marcus Mariota was playing. And the Titans were really bad that season. So we were like, they might get this guy. But I'm going to go in a different direction, a guy a little more recent than.
Ooh, okay.
I think he has one of my favorite stories of all time in college football, and that's Joe Burrow.
Okay.
Coming, he didn't. A guy from Ohio went to the school in Ohio, being Ohio State, didn't play much there, transfers to LSU, becomes a Heisman winner, the first overall pick, and wins a national championship. I love Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
I also have another honorable mention. It was one of my first years keeping up with college football, and Reggie Bush.
Oh,
I mean, Reggie.
What a great one.
I liked Reggie Bush so much that when he got drafted by the Saints,
yes,
I asked my mom to get me a Reggie Bush jersey, and she did.
Yeah.
And I actually think I still have that old Saints Reggie Bush jersey from,
you gotta
from
frame
back
that,
in the day,
man.
back at home.
Do we count Reggie Bush though?
Oh, come on. I mean,
I'm just saying.
Here we go.
I don't get into this whole conversation of taking awards away.
That's because Louisville won a national championship and it's gone.
Well,
now.
that too. But either way, I'm not for taking away accomplishments from what adults do in the decisions that they make. I'm not somebody that likes the kids in college getting punished just because adults are trying to bribe them with opportunities in order to help them in what they want in their career path. I'm not somebody that likes that. So Reggie Bush, 1,000% counts. He was one of the most electrifying players in all of college football. I mean, just go look at his highlight reel from back in the day. I mean, you were barely born. I think you were a baby when Reggie Bush was playing in college football. And also
05 probably?
Yeah, he was the 05 Heisman winner.
I was an infant.
He was electrifying. And also just those years in general, with USC and Texas playing in the national. I mean, that was one of the first college football games that I can actually remember. And I'm sure there's older guys and girls that are listening in the car right now that are thinking, wow, these kids are so young. But that was one of my first big memories of college football, was watching that Texas USC game, and Reggie Bush was always one of my guys.
Yeah, that's a good one. Another one would be Cam Newton. And
I was about to mention him too.
And the reason being, and this is one of my favorite things about Cam, is he did that commercial with the little kid when when I think it was the Play 365 or something like that with the NFL, and it was like, I'm gonna go big and strong and be like just like you. And then there's those memes that kid ended up turning into who was it? I forgot. I'm drawing a blank. That little boy, he turned into someone great. I forgot who it was. Someone in the league.
James.
No. It was not that. I can't remember who it was, but it was someone that took over for Cam. I'm trying to remember who that might be. But anyway, so
Either way,
that was a core memory for me.
615-737-1025. Text us in honor of the Heisman ceremony tonight. Who is your favorite Heisman Trophy winner, and why? And what are some of the memories that you had from that season? Cam Newton was always a guy that I was thinking about as well, but I felt like I could not claim Cam Newton because the whole year I rooted for him in the SEC because like I always like it when like an underdog in the SEC comes out, like not an Alabama at the time, not a Florida, not one of those big major powerhouses in LSU. So I was pulling for Cam Newton, but in the national championship, though, I've always been like, I love Oregon because of their jerseys and the way that they look and the flashiness about it. So I rooted for Oregon in that national championship. So I feel like I cannot claim Cam Newton because I didn't root for him all the way throughout that season. So mine is Robert Griffin III. So some good stuff there. But coming up next, I want to get into this whole conversation with the Tennessee Titans. Want to talk about this matchup against the Miami Dolphins. The Titans are just about 2 touchdown underdogs in this matchup on the road. Possibly should be more than that. Do they even have a chance? We're going to kind of get into this conversation of how the Titans can possibly stay in this game and how they might be able to come up with a win. But I'm also going to bring up a notion of maybe why they don't want to win. We're going to get into that next. You're listening to Riddle and the Reporter. Judy Riddle, Nick Keyser here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
Go ahead.
He's kind of taken on a different identity this year, specifically that pass rush. What have you seen from that front? And what makes them so difficult?
Yeah, they're a physical group. They're attacking. They can attack you from every position. Obviously, Chubb probably gets all the hype. 94 is a good player. He's disruptive on the inside. they're playing fast, they're playing physical, and they're playing hard. And when you get a front that can consistently do that, they typically have success. So I would say that those guys up front for them are doing a good job playing with that type of mindset.
That was Tim Kelly on the Dolphins pass rush, talking about how talented this group is, and they really have been one of the best pass rushes, one of the best front sevens all in all of football this year. And against the Titans offensive line that has just been simply struggling, it's going to be rough. And even though they did have Jalen Phillips go down on that Black Friday game that they played in MetLife, which, again, we know the stereotype and what everybody thinks about MetLife and the turf that they have going on there. A lot of injuries occur there, but even losing one of their top guys there, they still have Bradley Chubb, who they acquired from the Denver Broncos last year via trade. And the guy that was kind of their third edge rusher in the rotation, Andrew Van Ginkel. I don't know if you've heard of this kid, but he's come in and just been the surprise on this Dolphins team this year. Had a pick 6 last week against the Washington Commanders.
He's got some great hair.
He plays inside and outside linebacker. He's filled in for the Dolphins. So he's been all over the field and been a really big addition. So even though they lost one of their best pass rushers, he's filled in, and they've kind of seamlessly kept it going without one of their top players in Jalen Phillips, who went down.
Yeah, so far, 29 tackles solo, 4 sacks. Like I said, phenomenal hair from Wisconsin. So, look, that's great. If you have a guy that is secretly having a great season, but he's slowly coming into that form, and he's one of those guys that you can lean on as like a pinnacle piece, then that's phenomenal for them at least. Look, they're a 9-3 team. The Titans have 4 wins this year, so they're going to struggle. We know that they're going to struggle, Junie, and I think that Tim kind of talking about right there about the Dolphins pass rush, it's just another little bit of a tidbit of, our O-line, they will kind of it's going to be an insufferable conversation when it comes to the O-line just has to be better. And that's the overwhelming majority thing that we have talked about all season long. And so that's going to be something that you're going to see that's evident on Sunday. Can you help it? Not really. But then again, I'd rather be talking about a game like this than what happened on Thursday night. But hey, our boy Bailey Zappi played phenomenal. But I am looking
I don't want to talk about it.
I am looking forward to seeing how I had to squeeze that in there. I'm just looking forward to seeing how the Titans respond. D Mace made a good point yesterday. The Dolphins, they've not really played a lot of crazy good running backs. He thought, now this is Derek, he thought that the other best running backs that they've seen so far this year were Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, albeit, those are 2 teams that they've always had those guys popping off, and so I think it's easy to kind of go to those guys, but that's what their schedule's been like this year. So if Derrick Henry can kind of surprise, this team and come out, guns a-blazing and maybe show us the old Derrick a little bit, I think this could be a surprisingly good game, Junie. Possibly.
So all in all, there are some positives that are coming out of the injury report that could really help the Titans in this matchup, kind of like you mentioned. Number one, Teron Armstead, who's been kind of dealing with injuries all year long. Their starting left tackle. He's one of the best left tackles in the NFL. He is questionable. He was limited in practice yesterday. Jerome Baker did not practice yesterday. He is part of that inside linebacker tandem with David Long Jr., and we'll get into him a little bit later. Javon Holland, he's going to be questionable. He was limited in practice. I'm also looking at Christian Wilkins. He's probably their best defensive lineman. He is also dealing with some injuries as well. So we're talking about a lot of key players here for the Miami Dolphins. When they're fully healthy, I think they're easily a top 5 NFL team in the league so far this season. But all in all, it's going to be tough because they get a chain back, that really speedy running back, and I'm not necessarily as concerned about the way the Titans are going to defend the pass, because I just know that this secondary and how weak it is, that the Miami Dolphins are going to have their issues. But the thing that I was really worried about is the fact that the Titans are not going to have Jeffrey Simmons in this game. And this is going to make this Dolphins team that the Titans, I feel like, with Simmons in this game, could really make them more one-dimensional, which could kind of help them out and maybe take some things away from this Dolphins offense. But with Jeff Simmons out, I feel like it's going to be really hard to take the dynamic aspect of this Miami Dolphins offense away from them. I think they're going to be able to run the ball, use play action, and that's why I feel like this game could get a little bit out of hand if the Titans aren't careful.
Right, because that's their really easy Achilles heel, is having those pinnacle guys and those foundational guys that hold together the defense, the offense, anything that the Titans have kind of had going well for them this year, they're not going to have in this game. So that's going to be really tough. And Jeffrey Simmons, seeing him go down last week, I wasn't watching the play when he got hurt, but I did see the effort and the frustration from a lot of the guys that did get hurt. It sucks that Josh Wiley got hurt too. And, I think Chig is slowly kind of looking like what we expected him to look like.
He's getting back into form, catching the ball consistently.
But it still isn't great that you've got Josh down now, which sucks. And then I also just take a look at the Christian Fulton injury as well as – oh my gosh! Like it's like one of those. Now, can he help it necessarily? No, it's an injury. Like
but it's again.
It is again. So,
and this is actually a perfect segue into something that I was reading about here, and that was about Mike Vrabel and his comments in the offseason about guys who are how do you say, repeat offenders?
Yeah, prone to soft tissue.
And so basically, I was reading an article from the Miami Herald. Talking to David Long Jr. And so they asked him, they go, in light of Vrabel's comments, is there any extra motivation going against the Titans on Monday night at Hard Rock Stadium? His response, he goes, yeah, a little bit, Long said on Thursday, but he knows the type of player I am. He knows what he's going to get, and I plan to deliver that. And he goes, and they further go on and say, at the time of Vrabel's comments, Long said it was unfortunate about those remarks, created a narrative about how he takes care of his body, and that it would only add a chip on his shoulder this season. After missing a combined 12 games in the past 2 years, Long hasn't missed a game this season.
What a weird turn of events. Just to see how a former Titan is now completely healthy.
Yeah.
Does he care more about himself? Is it the way that he trains? Is it the way that the organization helps, take care of their players? I have no idea. I think that'd be a great question to ask.
I don't know, but it's also the fact that Pro Football Focus has rated David Long Jr. as the number one linebacker in the league defending against the run.
Isn't that nuts to think about? I mean, why? Why was that so different for him to make that transition? Now it's coaching. That's the easy answer, right? That's where everything's rooted from. But, I thought at times he had flashes of being a great player in Nashville. I mean, there were times when I thought he could be one of those guys that they could lean on for game-making plays, or game-changing plays, excuse me. But I saw that transaction when the Titans didn't bring him back as a good one almost, where I thought, oh, this makes sense. He's not coming back because it didn't make sense to keep a guy like that missed so much time. That was the talk of the town. He was the guy that was always out. He was the Christian Fulton back then. I mean,
but except when he was in the game, he played at a high level.
Yes.
Christian Fulton was still having his woes as a player, all in all.
Yes.
But David Long Jr., whenever he was playing on the field as a Titan, I mean, he always stood out as somebody that was really, really good, always in position, making plays. And that was one of my big questions going into the season. I'm like, without David Long Jr., although he was dealing with injury, who are you going to replace him with at inside linebacker? And inside linebacker was one of my number one concerns with this team, and I think it's made a huge impact. They don't defend the run like they do, and clearly seeing the stats of David Long Jr. this season, they could use a guy like that to defend the run. And not to mention his play ability in the pass game as well. I mean, we saw him make the game-saving interception last year against the Commanders in Washington,
Phenomenal
where he got that goal line interception. So all in all, I feel like David Long Jr. is a huge asset to this Dolphins team, and you brought it up about how can the Titans win this game. It's going to have to be through Derrick Henry, because I just don't think with the way this offensive line for the Titans has been playing, they cannot protect Will Levis in this matchup. They just simply can't.
No, they can't. And here's the thing, too. The Titans really only have one true weapon in DeAndre Hopkins in the air. And what are they going to do? Put 2 or 3 guys on him in coverage. And so that's going to be the toughest thing about it.
And have you seen the Dolphins secondary?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking
Jalen
Ramsey, Xavier Howard, Javon Holland, who had that big before the half ended, that Hail Mary the Jets threw, and he returned it all the way back. I mean, Javon Holland, I think, is one of the most underrated safety. And then a guy I'm familiar with, he used to play for the Ravens, Deshaun Elliott. I mean, they got guys all over this. I mean, Bradley Chubb, he's 4th in the NFL in pass rush win rate. Already mentioned Andrew Van Winkle, or Van Ginkel, I'm sorry.
Ginkel.
Jerome Baker, David Long Jr. are probably one of the best 2 inside linebacker tandems in the league. But the big thing is Christian Wilkins going to go for this game? That is to be determined, because he is questionable, but he is a big run-stuffing defensive lineman. So up and down this roster, all in all, it's not as much the offense as I'm worried about as if the Titans can even compete on the scoreboard with this team, with how underratedly good this Miami Dolphins defense truly is.
So another headline that we haven't really talked about, it's not worth too much time, I don't think, but we did see the Titans make a change at a coach this week.
Yes, they did.
So not having Craig Ackerman moving forward, we know is a big resounding, oh yes, by so many people here at this radio station. But I have a concern about that.
Okay.
I really do. And not having Ryan Stonehouse, he got hurt.
Yep.
He had surgery this week. So, I hope that recovery goes well for him. But that's a concern for the Titans, because when they even get in trouble, are they going to have an answer to put the ball deep downfield as much as possible? And also, for the love, Ryan Tannehill, we gave you the bench. Stay on the bench. We don't need you to hold kicks. Please stay there. That was not – like, they got put in a bad spot last week.
Yeah.
But –
And that's the thing, too. In the press box, I was talking, they were like, well, the hold looked good. And I'm like, no. Look, like, if you look at the camera angle when it's right there on the hold,
I don't know about
you
that.
see at the last second that Tannehill adjusts the ball just ever so slightly.
Yes.
But that last second adjustment, I feel like what was wrong. And all in all, we can't have that happen. And again, props to Tannehill, because he adjusted.
He did.
And they figured it out. But I will tell you this. I know Titans fans were fed up with Craig Ackerman, and they're probably excited that they're moving on from him.
Yep.
But as a Steelers fan who wanted them to fire Matt Canada, and knowing that they did move off Canada, it's not something that you're going to see the results show here at this stage, especially this late in the season. It's not going to be till next year you really start to see a tide turn in the special team. So, yes, Ackerman is gone, but the residual effect of him still being the coordinator for this amount of time during the season, it's really not going to change much.
And please share your thoughts, 615-737-1025. I'd love to see what this turns into. Do we really think it's more about the Titans changing small things that lead into bigger things? Because we talked about maybe David Long having his health problems. Now it's the special teams. So there's a few different aspects. But give us your thoughts, because I'd be super curious. We will get to your phones later this hour. But Teron, I loved his story this weekend. Junie, I don't know if you read through it all the way, but it was a great piece of journalism, and I'm glad that he wrote it.
Yep, no, absolutely. With all the drama centered around the Tennessee Titans and Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon's relationship, our very own Teron Davenport, ESPN Nation's Titans team reporter, sat down with both guys to talk about their relationship, and I think it kind of cleared the air a little bit. We will get into that next. And also our question of the day, who Who is your favorite Heisman winner of all time in honor of the ceremony being tonight? That you can catch that on ESPN and ABC. We will get into your text on that question and Talking Titans as well. You're listening to Riddle and the Reporter here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
People are still going to try and create this narrative that maybe there's a rift between Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel, even though from what they said in your article, it kind of feels like there isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a narrative that people just want to keep because you know how it is. Like, you know, you drive on the highway and you see a car on the side of the road, right? Everybody wants to see an accident. You know, like people want to see that stuff. So it's going to continue to be pushed. And I mean, we know what the narrative is, but we know what I know what the truth is, you know. So being able to decipher the two, I mean, I would find it hard to believe that both of these men sat and looked me right in the face and lied to me. So I believe that there isn't a rift. Are there problems? Absolutely. But every relationship has problems, but it's just as adults, you work through that and you make it productive.
That was Teron Davenport on our station talking with Chase McCabe about how he sat down with both Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon talking about their relationship. And with all the rumors coming out of Boston with the Ben Volen report from the Boston Globe, kind of talking about how the Patriots see Mike Vrabel as the home run hire, right? And then also the Boston Sports Journal.
Yep. Boston Globe, yeah.
No.
Or was it? Oh, yeah. That's the guy that was on Substack or something like that. He was formerly of Boston, that publication that you were just talking about.
No, I'm trying to think of the guy. I can't even think of the guy's name that did the Boston Sports Journal that basically said that Carthon and Mike Vrabel were at odds. Why can't I think of that guy's name? Either way, it maybe because his report was so full of BS.
Yes.
That's why I've already forgotten his name.
Well, the point of this is that Tehran went to the two biggest guys that are related to the story and asked them about it. I think that's the biggest part of this entire thing is you have Carthon, who's an open book. I'm glad he's an open book as a GM because a lot of GMs don't have to be an open book, Junie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I got from this story overarchingly. But what were your overall impressions of what Carthon had to say? Did anything stand out to you in this story with TD?
What stood out to me was, I guess, the whole Paul Kaharski talking about how he never sees them talking at practice, and then of course after he says that on the radio the very next day they're doing it. It kind of made me feel like that they don't talk as much. But I guess that Carthon kind of mentioning how him and Vrabel, whether it's him going to Vrabel's office or Vrabel going to his office,
right,
how they sit and talk just about every day about what's going on and latest updates and how things are trending and maybe some ideas. The fact that he mentioned that and also talking about how the coaches send him over tape about what exactly they're looking for, it kind of made me feel almost silly. And the guy's name that I was kind of slipping up on here was Greg Bedard from the Boston Sports Journal talking about how Vrabel wants to get out and how him and Rand Carthon's relationship isn't good and all this stuff. And to be honest with you, this is something that as young members of the media that this is a learning tool for us.
Yeah.
Like, let's not fall into initial reports, especially when we know where they're coming from. The Ben Volen, the Greg Bedard reports coming out of Boston, both these guys are linked up with the Patriots. Patriots are one of the worst teams in the NFL. Obviously, clearly, they are getting the Patriots side of things. And with the Titans season not going the way that a lot of fans and a lot of media members hear and how it was expected to go, of course they're going to try and stir the narrative that Mike Vrabel wants to get out of here so that they can try and land the guy that they ultimately want to take over for Bill Belichick.
Yes.
That's essentially what this has been.
There has to be, I think, a good patience level from Mike to make that choice. And what I mean by that is give it some more time. Give it, till this off season to go, do I want to be part of this team moving forward or not? And, realistically, this is more of Mike's team than it is Rand's team in a 1-year span because Mike knows these guys personally. That's like coming in to a friend group and you guys have an inside joke and, you're not part of it, but you'd be like to be part of one day. Rand has gotten to know these guys. He has been able to make those assessments for himself, to make those choices. Did he make the best choices this offseason? No, not necessarily. And there's still time to see how some of those work out because you have to see through some of those things at least a season through, Junie. But I think that the biggest thing for me in this story is obviously they keep using the word collaboration. They're going to continue to do that. But I think what I like the most, and you kind of hit on it too, the routine, what they do, how they have those conversations. But I think for Rand's sake, it's figuring it out. He's going to make mistakes before he figures things out. And so no matter who you are, a member of the media, a fan, someone that watches the Titans from a national perspective, or if you see them on the sideline, and just in terms of maybe the headlines that you don't see every single day, but they'll pop up like every now and then, that the Titans are slowly building back into the team that they were a few years ago. So I think for Rand, the reason that this story is such a good clarification and not a puff piece, by the way, and no, TD is not a Vrabel yes man, so you can leave those words out of your mouth. I would say you learn from someone's perspective.
Yes.
That is what Rand has done here. Mike will not give you much of it, but Mike is going to tell you that I'm still going to make these guys fight week in, week out.
And let me say this. I don't think people who are putting blame this offseason on Rand Carthon, I don't think it's warranted.
Sure.
I really, really don't, because when you're coming into this situation, and normally when GMs get hired, they get their choice of a head coach.
Right.
And so Vrabel's already coming in with merit, and clearly the Titans ownership chose him over John Robinson. So clearly he's going to have seniority, right? And so when you're Rand Carthon and you're kind of already coming into an established situation, you're going to kind of go off of what's already there.
Yep.
and the guy that knows this team the best, and that's Mike Vrabel. Clearly, they didn't want to go into full rebuild mode this year. That's not what they wanted to do. That's why they didn't unload Kevin Byard in the offseason. That's why they waited till the trade deadline to do that. That's why they kept and hung on to Ryan Tannehill when they could have saved a bunch of money if they were to cut him and to move on and go with one of the young guys.
Yeah.
But here's my point in all this, is that the Titans wanted to continue to go for it.
Yes.
And they didn't have a lot of money to work with. And
Right.
regardless of what you think of the cap in the NFL and how it can be manipulated, the Titans and their ownership are not a team that is going to go out of their way to use ownership money outside of the salary cap to get big players and to put guys on signing bonus and to convert all this money outside of cap space and use Amy's money out of pocket. They're just not a team that does that.
No.
They don't have one of the wealthy owners in the league like a Kroenke or like the Walmart family with the Broncos or any of those guys. That's not what this team is. They build through the draft, and they build through the amount of cap space they have available.
Right.
So this offseason, this is kind of also what I want to transition to a little bit.
Okay.
The Titans are going to have upwards to somewhere to 80, 90 plus $1 million in cap space. I think that this could be a year that we really see what Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel can do, because I don't think either guy is going anywhere.
Sure.
And I think that this is going to be the season where this is going to be the offseason, I should say, that they're going to start to build around these guys. Go out and get big name free agents. You're going to be drafting high, higher than you have been in many years. This is the offseason where it's full go-for-it mode, and that the Titans are going to use everything at their disposal to try and build around a young Will Levis.
Yeah.
As long as he doesn't completely collapse at the end of the year.
I could see this being a really big factor for trust as well, because if Rand is someone that has exercised patience to get to know his organization, that makes me feel comfortable as a fan, at least, watching this team. But if you look at the team in the grand scheme of things, you would rather have that, right? You would rather have someone take their time. They don't want to come in, take off their shoes, and wipe their feet all over this team, because that's not right. You want to come in and you want to make a good impression on these guys, because if you don't do that, those relationships will wither and die, and that's not a good way to end things with anybody. But I would also say that taking a look at the offseason, since you've already kind of touched on it, and we'd love to hear from you coming up next, but I think that also as well, I think just how are you going to pitch to people, hey, come to Nashville, no state income tax. Here's where we've had success a few years ago. Here's our new GM. Here's Mike Vrabel. I'd love to know, how are they going to make that attractable? And I hate the focus that far ahead, but since you brought it up, that's how I'm going to think. I think a lot later down the line, a few months from now, especially after New Year's, is how do they even approach going about some of their moves coming up? So that's interesting.
So I will say this, though, and this is kind of what I was alluding to a little bit earlier, is if the Titans do want to get into a situation where they start winning games down the stretch. I mean, you're talking two games against the Texans. You got the Jags last game of the year. You're going to Miami. I mean, these are very, very tough games, and it's very plausible that they could lose out.
Yeah.
And if they do,
that's fine.
They have a significant chance in picking inside the top 5,
that's
maybe
fine.
even top 3 of some of these teams.
That's great.
Because I will say this, and I got a guy or a girl in the text line chirping me in the text line saying, worst team in the NFL just beat your Steelers. If you lose 2 weeks in a row to 2 10-loss teams, you're one of the worst teams in the league. And Titans fans should be thanking the Steelers right now, because 2 of those teams that only had 2 wins on the season now have 3 wins, and the Titans have 4. So if the Patriots and the Cardinals get another win, you could be in a situation where that could really help the Titans in the pecking order of getting a really big game-changing player inside the top 5.
And by the way, they've not drafted inside the top 10. They had 11, which was pretty much top 10 last year with Peter. But the last time they drafted in
2017?
Yeah, Corey Davis.
Corey Davis at number 5.
Yeah.
So all in all, if you lose out, that could put you in a situation where you might be in the conversation for a Marvin Harrison Jr. Or that the tackle. What is his last name? Is it Joe Alt from Notre Dame? I think he's the number 1 tackle that they're listing off the board. So all in all, could be something that the Titans are looking forward to. Of they have the money, they might have the draft capital to make a quicker turnaround than what fans are getting questioned for. But we want to hear from you, the fans. 615-737-1025. Any questions you have or any discussion you want to bring up about the Tennessee Titans, we are opening up the phones. Again, 615-737-1025 is our phone and text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We're going to hit the phones coming up next here on Riddle and the Reporter, Junie Riddle, Nick Keyser on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Make your silly underdog picks for your chance to win weekly prizes. You can play the game, Nashville.com, or the 102.5 The Game app. Silly Underdog Picks is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Welcome back in to Riddle and the Reporter. We are taking your calls and text, 615-737-1025 on the Tennessee Titans. Also, not to mention, we're not going to get away from it, our question of the day in honor of the Heisman ceremony tonight. Your favorite Heisman winner of all time. And I'm going to go to the text line really quickly.
Yeah, and let us know who you think's going to win tonight, too.
Yeah, who do you think's going to win tonight? I think it's actually a pretty close
This is going to be a
bout.
really fun ceremony.
I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels. But all in all, I want to get to Julie's text because the way I phrased it earlier, I was like, all the guys out there that have been watching, and I was like, and girls and ladies. There is a lot of lady football fans
How
out there.
dare you, Junie?
And I should know this because my mom and sister are also big football fans as well. So
Shut
to all
up.
the ladies, I
you
am
go.
sorry the way I paraphrased that. So Julie, I'm shouting you out. She gave her list top 3. Reggie Bush absolutely still owns that award. Number 2, Charlie Ward. Hello, two athlete stud, and his quote about Notre Dame. Number 1, Charles Woodson, stud, never win, best position in football. And she goes, this is Julie. Yes, a woman. So shout out, Julie. Thanks for texting in your top Heisman winners. But all in all, getting back into the conversation about the Titans. Got a lot of calls and text on that. We got Wes from Hermitage wants to weigh in on the Titans. What's going on, Wes? Happy Saturday to you. What are your Titans thoughts this weekend?
And how are y'all doing this morning?
Man, we're doing good, staying in there, man. So what's going on with the team?
I don't know, man. I keep going back and forth with this game. My first question is there really a path to victory, and is it just as simple as, our offense just trying to run as much as possible to keep time of possession in our favor so that they don't have the ball? But I just don't see a way for the Titans to win this game, and that just makes me think that the Titans may somehow pull this game out. I watched Jacksonville really, really put it to Miami, and I still to this day don't think Jacksonville's a very good team. They're okay. They're not great. But I just don't see a path to victory for the Titans, which makes me think somehow Vrabel's going to pull this out, and how do we do it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great point, Wes. I agree with you. The only way to me that they win this game is if they muddy it up. Right. Derrick Henry's going to have one of his better games in order to do this. And the Dolphins are a top 10 team in defending the run in the NFL. And like I mentioned earlier, if Wilkins, their defensive lineman, and Jerome Baker are both out, that's a path to be able to do that because you're talking about 2 of your better run-stuffing defenders there in the middle of that defense that are going to be big losses for this team. And if that's the case, I think Derrick Henry might have a really good shot in to muddy this game up. And also to your point, too, I mean, how many times have we seen teams this year that are just such overwhelming favorites that it just adds motivation to the opposing team to where they just come out and have a really just a nothing-to-lose attitude and pull out all their cards and somehow get a win?
It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, we don't match up with them well at all, but it's just these seem to be the games, and I know people like to call it a Vrabel special. I'm not going to call it a Vrabel special because I think that's gone this season.
Yeah.
But it's just, man, it just doesn't make any sense, and I know how weird these Titans are, and what more of a Titans way to win would be on Monday night when you're almost the worst team in the league going against basically one of the best teams in the league on prime time, and you're going to beat a team in a fashion you shouldn't, just to make sure that you get a worse draft pick. And it just seems like it's ego with me. I called and asked about why was it so important, for us to beat Jacksonville a few weeks ago, or why was the Carolina game so important? And everybody just basically said ego, ego, ego. Well, I'm tired of winning for ego because when you win for ego, you get nothing except for a middle of the pack, and then you get stuck in, that time frame where you really can't do anything in the draft or outside of the draft. So I don't know, man. I'm just real confused by this team right now, but we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call, Wes. Enjoy the game on Monday night. Hopefully the Titans can make it somewhat competitive in this matchup. But he brings up a good point. It's like at this moment in time, if they keep winning, what does that actually do for them? Because you're already 4-8. You'd have to win out and need some help in order to get into the playoffs. So, I mean, you're talking about a percent chance to even make it. Mm-hmm. What is the point of winning at this moment in time? I mean, really the only thing that I could come up with, Nick, is the confidence of Will Levis.
I mean, sure. I mean, that's a great aspect. But ultimately, I think just having a good football game And it doesn't have to be necessarily a win to feel better or take steps or baby steps toward what you want to be in the NFL. So, look, this is purely a learning time for the Titans. This is let's figure stuff out. What works, what doesn't work, and how can we establish our work ethic in a much better way? And for a lot of guys, the way I would maybe look at this, and I'm not going to speak as if I am a member of the team, but maybe this is a good approach. And I think this would be a way I would maybe want to encourage people is think about this as a clean slate. We're not having a great year right now. We're going to be on national TV. Let's have a clean slate moving forward the rest of the season, and let's play like we love the game and just put everything out there. And that's the best way that you could look at this maybe. Now, I don't know. I was, always part of my leadership group when I was coming up through hockey, but I think that having that attitude at least can go a really long way, Judy. And I feel like that would be something to benefit off of if you are a guy like Will Levis, because he was really down on himself last week.
Oh, I mean, he called it his worst performance as a Titan, which I would disagree with that.
It's early.
For me, it's just so hard to gauge Will Levis because he has a really bad offensive line. The run game, it's good at home, but it's not good at all on the road. And you're also talking about, this season, you got DeAndre Hopkins, but your number 2 wide receiver is Nick Westbrook-Akina. And I love Nick Westbrook-Akina. I think he's a great asset to have on your team, but he's not a number 2.
He's had one
he's
great
not a,
I think
he's not a number 2.
He's had one great game in the last season pretty much, I would say.
So, in my opinion, I think the best case scenario for this Titans team is for Will Levis to look good and for them to keep losing out and get a high draft pick.
Maybe so.
Because we saw, and I keep bringing this up, we saw what Joe Burrow did his rookie year. He looked really good. You could see the potential. You could see the promise. And then they end up picking in the top 5 and going and getting Jamar Chase. And then they're in the Super Bowl the following year. I mean, that's what can happen in this league. That is what this league is built upon, to have quick turnarounds like that. So if you have your guy and you build him up the right way, then you can have a quick turnaround. So I'm going to get to this last text here. It says it's an unnamed texter, so text in your name so you can get some credit. He says it's all about the money. That's the best sales pitch. Look at the Browns over the past decade and a half. They always attract big names, big free agents, and the free agents knew they were going to a losing team. DeAndre could have taken less and went to a Super Bowl team again, but at the end of the day, all players want is money, and I don't blame them.
Sure.
So with this offseason, Nick, they got money. They're more than likely going to have really good draft picks. And they got to capitalize on this offseason. I would say this is the most important offseason for the Tennessee Titans since they drafted Marcus Mariota.
Maybe so. And here's a way to look at it as well, and it might be because I've been watching Ballers, which is a great series, by the way, just because I like to have those insights as a writer and seeing what that world is like from an agent and a player, those types of relationships and the drama. But also, too, I think as a person, this is how I would view maybe if you're trying to sign somewhere or go somewhere to further your career where you play pro ball for a living, is where you're going to be happy. Where do you think you will have success, not only in the locker room, but also moving forward in your future? How do you look at the next few seasons, or how do you look at the next year and go, I'll be a better person because I signed with so-and-so? That's the way I would look at it.
Absolutely. So kind of wrapping some things up on the Titans. Tough matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Can the Titans stay in this game? I mean, that's really the big question all in all. But, tough sledding, tough season. It'll be interesting to see how it ends up. What's the narrative around Will Levis and what's the future of this team? Because if they are picking inside the top 5, that's going to be a question all offseason. Do they stick with Will Levis, or do they go and get one of these really popular prospects that everybody's hyping up this year in the NFL draft? It's going to be really interesting to watch and see what this team does going down the stretch. But coming up next, there's another team in town, and the narrative about this team is the complete opposite spectrum of the Titans. The Preds, in the midst of a rebuild, are red hot and looking like they could be a true playoff contender. We're going to get into that next, and Nick Keyser, the reporter, is going to give all of his latest insight with the team. Talking Nashville Predators coming up next. This is Riddle and the Reporter here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2 of Riddle and the Reporter, Junior Riddle, Nick Keyser, live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. You can watch it streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single Saturday from 9 to 11. You can also use those streaming platforms for all of our day shows from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. And I don't know if you listened yesterday, Nick, but I loved the Paul Kaharski and Robbie and Rexroad collaboration in the afternoons. I thought it was a little bit of a change of pace. Thought it sounded good. Thought the guys did a great job. Was it odd for you not having Robbie and Joe in the morning instead of in chasing Big Joe in there?
Very much so. Did you see the GIF I tweeted yesterday afternoon?
No, I didn't.
Missing out. It was Squidward in his house looking outside, seeing Patrick and SpongeBob running around. So I had to have fun with the guys a little bit yesterday, tell them that I missed having them, part of my daily routine. But they were in the afternoon. I was blessed to have Chase McCabe and Big Joe yesterday morning for 5 hours. They were on the air. I was still there for 3 hours.
And look, they were in a good mood because they're about to go to the beach.
Yeah, they're going to Miami, so they're already down there now. So yeah, I had them jazzed up for that. I've not produced anything for Chase in a long time. It's usually Nick Frazier. Dr. Crane is what they usually call him. We need to give Connor a nickname. I think that would be fun as well.
Please
but
don't.
Maybe so.
Please
you kind of deserve one at this point because you're like a little brother.
What are those like blow up dolls that you punch and they like wobble back and forth?
I thought you were going to go somewhere else there.
No.
Be careful.
No.
Golly.
It's a family show.
That has more to do of your thought process than mine. I'm talking about a child's toy here. You're talking about more of an adult toy.
Yeah,
but either way, we're not going to get into that. Either way,
I could call him like a hockey nickname would be like Newtsy.
Newtsy?
What's up, Newtsy?
Newtsy.
No, not really.
That's so Canadian.
I don't like it.
Well, that's why. We are talking hockey, so we'll see how this weekend goes. But we're not going to make it stick. But anyway.
Yeah,
So,
we are talking Nashville Predators. The team is really starting to hit a stride. You put a stat in there. Has it been they've won 8 out of their last 10?
yeah, they're 8-2-0 in their last 10 now.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So the Nashville Predators got a huge win the other night, Star Wars night, which I completely nerded out on. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I'm a
I
big
saw
Star
you
Wars guy.
tweet out a photo of Boba Fett. So
Yeah,
there you go.
so big fan of that. And then they also got a marquee win against a pretty good Tampa Bay Lightning team.
Yes,
so
they did.
What have been some of your takeaways the last couple weeks from this team? What have they been improving on? What are some things that are still kind of the same? And also starting to get a little bit healthy. Tommy Novak back in the lineup. That's my guy, Tommy Novak.
I think the last little bit here, they've been a confident group, but they've also been getting healthier, which is a really good sign to what this team could be. But also the fact that they had success without guys like Tommy Novak, Cody Glass, and even Luke Shin for a good chunk of time as well. The Predators were still thriving. And so yesterday you see Spencer Stastny get assigned to the Milwaukee Admirals, and also Liam Foodie. He went through waivers and he made it through. So good to see that. Got a little love from Elliot Friedman there as well, which is good. He's a friend of the show here on the midday with Caroline, Willie, and Derek. And so, look, it was fun to see that the Preds, they've decided that they're not going to waver from playing relentless hockey. And that was way back to the offseason, right?
Yeah.
They said, we're going to come in this year, we're going to implement, Andrew's system. And to Andrew's benefit, it's been phenomenal hockey to watch. It's been really tiresome to watch them play. They played a lot of hockey lately as well, but it's been really refreshing to see how this group has responded to adversity at times, because I feel like it's so easy to roll over when things get hard sometimes and things are mentally and physically stressing you out. And so this group, Junie, to their credit, they've done really well handling that.
No, and all in all, I think just them kind of falling into the scheme of things, and starting to really get a rhythm with a more offensive centric, being a more offensive centric team,
right?
I think has been crucial for them. But Tommy Novak coming back, he jumped off to a really, really hot start. Having him come back, Cody Glass should be returning anytime soon now. When is he expected to come back?
So he was missing time with an upper body injury. He got hit in the shoulder with Josh Manson back when Ryan Johansson returned to Nashville for the first time since being traded over there. Mm-hmm. Look, I mean, I would say the fact that Foodie went on waivers and then you had Spencer go back to Milwaukee, that's an indication that Cody's with the team this weekend.
Yeah.
Not saying he's going to play today whatsoever, but we'll see.
Options out there.
We'll see if he does return this weekend. And he was skating with the group. That was something that was encouraging to me. I didn't, Tommy Novak hadn't skated at all since he got hurt, and he was on the ice Thursday before the game. So, I mean, I thought maybe Cody would have played that night, but he didn't. So that's been the biggest storyline for me is, when will Cody come back now that Tommy has dressed in one of the games? Tommy was playing on a line with Juuso Parssinen and Luke Evangelista, so we might end up seeing the Parssinen will have to be moved around. Glass will be, put in there somewhere, right? So that's going to be an interesting combination to kind of think about. But I would anticipate Cody playing one or both of these games this weekend, I would say.
So some of the takeaways that I've gotten from the last couple games is the young guys that we were having some question marks about. Philip Tomasino. He's had a lot of good scoring chances.
Absolutely.
And has he capitalized on most of them? No, he has not. But I like the fact that he's getting into the mix, taking some chances, putting the puck on net, and starting to find his role a little bit in this offense.
Yep.
Juuso Parssinen is another guy. He has been ultra aggressive, putting the puck in the net a couple times in the past couple games, being much more active in this offense. These are crucial players that are helping this.
Oh, yeah.
And a huge surprise for me this year has been Gus Nyquist. And again, is he going to be the guy that you're highlighting on the first line? No, he's not, because Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg are having great years.
Right, but
They're having
Gus,
great years. But he is filling an excellent role on that line that is, one, not getting talked about enough, and number two, that is really been that final piece on that line that although he's not your stereotypical first liner, which was a concern for me, he's come out there and he's played excellent with those two guys.
Yeah, and think about it this way, too. The way that the Predators looked at signing both Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist was, we know what they've done, and it's been about their reputation a little bit, but they're both guys that are in their 30s. You know, Gus is 34, and he just went on an 8-game point streak. You know, that was something that he hadn't done in over 5 years, Junie. So when you have a guy that is acclimated to a team that where he can play with Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, and to those guys' credit, playing with Gus, that's just chemistry. That's just, hey, I'm seeing you all over the ice. And also, Philip Forsberg has arguably been a top 5 scorer just in terms of talent this year. He's been phenomenal. I mean, Phil Buary is usually what they call it, but he has been on a tear the first 2 months of the season. And so I would anticipate Gus continuing to perform really well. He has 18 points in 26 games this year, Junie. And so I think that power play has been everything that they've needed for a long time. And Gus, from his days playing with the Red Wings, you know, he played with the Magic Man, you know, or the Magician and Pavel Datsyuk. He also played with guys like Henrik Zetterberg, and, you know, Nick Lidstrom was back on defense there as well toward his, you know, end of his time in Detroit. But I think that the Preds looked at Gus and they knew, okay, Gus, you know what it takes to play with really talented players. I'm talking some of the best in the world. So that's what this lineup's done. And then you talked about Phil Tomasino. You know, he's been a guy that hasn't buried the chances. He's had some big gimmies that he's missed on. So it's been tough to see him, you know, kind of miss the net. But he's been their quote-unquote kid. He is the kid for Michael McCarron and Cole Smith. So it's fun to see that Philip Tomasino has, you know, come into his own role now, Junie.
So right now the Preds are 5th in the Central Division. They are also the 2nd wild card at this moment in time. They are tied with the Arizona Coyotes, sitting with 28 points. And I think the only reason the Coyotes are ahead of the Predators right now is because of that head-to-head.
Yes.
And they also have a significant goal differential
Yeah.
as well. So the Preds are sitting there right there in a playoff spot. I think they're going to be competing for that wild card spot all season long. But what question comes to mind when I'm thinking about where the Preds are right now is how better off would they be if UC Saros was kind of having more of a UC Saros year? Because I feel like he's come off to a rough start.
Right.
And he just got his first steal of the season
Yes.
a few games ago.
Yep.
And last year he had 14 of those.
Right.
And so they were coming at a much higher rate.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is going on with UC Saros? Do you expect him to get better throughout the season? And if he does start to come on like we've seen the past couple of years, what do you think the ceiling for this Predators team is?
Well, the ceiling would be a playoff team.
Yes.
I think that's the easy answer.
A playoff team that can, you know,
Quietly
be one and done,
surprising.
or maybe win a series.
I mean, I'm not going to go ahead and say win a series. I think they would be a good first-round team for sure. Now, I think if they went to the playoffs now, they'd play Vegas, I think is who they would play. So, look, you never know what that Vegas team would look like necessarily. It could be a whole Chicago Blackhawks story where you beat them in as many games as you need to win, which is 4. So, not saying that that's going to happen. That's way too early to even talk about. Wouldn't say that it would happen right now because Vegas is really talented. But
Yeah.
look, I was talking about this with Willie yesterday. I was texting him some, and I asked him if, you know, hey, after that steal, did he get another one the other night against the you know, Lightning? And no, he obviously didn't, but I just kind of wanted to figure out what it took to maybe get counted for a steal. And so one thing he pointed out to me was that the Predators were expected to have 4 expected goals against, yet they won 5-1. So that told me Saros played a damn good hockey game.
Yes.
So if he's going to continue to put that out there and just be a great guy, which we all know that he can be on the ice, then the Predators' ceiling is huge compared to where maybe people had them to start the season. So the expectation for him has been to be a great goalie. Now, I did this, and really fast here, I'll kind of go through this. So I looked at UC Saros' first 20 games ever since 2018, which is kind of when he came over as the starter for the Nashville Predators, and Pekka was still with the Preds as well. One thing I found interesting was that through 20 starts, he's only gotten to double-digit wins, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, which isn't horrible, but also when you take a look at his goals against and his save percentage, he's only been, I think, below that. He's been, well, honestly, he's been above 3 more than you would like him to, but I think for him, he's had slow starts. We know that. Now, this year, I think it's taken more time for him because of a new system. So you have to give him credit for just how he's handled it. And so I don't know if he's going to play tonight, but I would anticipate seeing Kevin Lankinen more often, because if you get a guy in a groove and Kevin can be in a groove kind of at the same time, that might bode well for the Predators. And so I'm kind of curious to see who I end up seeing who's first off the ice for the Predators. I'm hearing it will probably be Kevin because of some folks I've been talking to in Toronto that are at morning skate right now, but I would anticipate seeing a good weekend from both of these guys. So the Preds are on a roll, and there's a lot to be excited about, Junie.
Absolutely. Like you said, Preds are rolling. They're playing good, 14-12 on the season. Currently sitting in a wild card spot. They play the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight at 6 p.m. Pregame is going to be at 5 with Max Hers. They got another game in Canada playing the Canadiens tomorrow at 6 as well. And then they come back to Bridgestone Arena to take on the Flyers on Tuesday at 7 p.m. So always tune in an hour early with Max Hers for the pregame show. He's always giving away some tickets, so if you get a part of that, you might get a chance to go to a game. So all in all, big stuff for the Preds. But coming up next, this might be a little bit of old news, but I got to talk about this. I want to talk about college football and the college football playoff. Did the committee get it right putting in Alabama over Florida State? I got some hefty opinions on this and about college football in general. We are going to discuss that coming up next. You're listening to Riddle and the Reporter here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason at Twin Peaks in Madison this Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. for our NFL pregame show. They'll break down the Titans' Week 14 matchup against the Miami Dolphins and give you the latest updates before the game. Our NFL pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and The Beast Unleashed. Welcome back into Riddle and the Reporter. And I mentioned this before the break. Listen, I know this is old news, but we only get Saturday mornings to talk about what we want to talk about in the world of sports. So I want to bring it back up. College football playoffs. Number 1, Michigan. Number 2, Washington. Number 3, Texas. Number 4, Alabama. Leaving undefeated Florida State, 13-0 ACC champion, out of the college football playoffs. Now, I have my opinions about this. I feel very strongly about this. And I think Florida State got royally screwed in all of this. How can you have a Power 5 conference champion that did everything right, that won all of their games, looked like one of the best college football teams in the land, had an elite defense, and then they miss out? They miss out, undefeated. That completely, in my opinion, invalidates the ACC entirely as a conference. And I would sit here and argue with you, the ACC is not even the worst Power 5 conference in the nation. I listen, outside of Ohio State and Michigan, the Big Ten is awful. The Big Ten is terrible, and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about how the Big Ten is terrible. They just keep hyping it up because of some of the big-name programs that are in there. I think the ACC, from top to bottom, is a better college football conference than the Big Ten right now.
I would say so. I think we have an interesting text to kind of take a look at as well. I will let you get to it as well. It's from a 206. So I find that the way that they've gone about voting about this every single year, it's tough not to look at, ever since that they've done the college football playoff. I think it's, what year is this, 11 or 12 that they've done this, something like that. But I know that Alabama's now made it 7 years now. 7 years. And so I'm not saying to leave them out because of how many times they've been in. I mean, in the eyes of the committee, they've deserved to be in, right? So that makes sense. But when you leave out a 13-0 team, there has to be really good cause for concern. Now, to be in their shoes, they're looking at it as, and this is what they might be thinking. This is not how I would feel, and I'll tell you how I feel about it as well, really fast. But the way that the committee would look at this is, you lost your quarterback, you have had some tough games this year, but you've remained undefeated. And the way that we see it is, the brand of football that you play, we just don't think it matches up against any of the other 3 teams that are going to be in the college football playoff, which is ridiculous if you ask me. They were a team that proved time and time again, even through adversity, that they would prevail, that they would win, because they went and had a great undefeated season. That's a shame that they did not get more consideration. Now, if the vote was closer, I think we'd still have all this big hoopla about it. Junie, to me, I understand. I do understand. Am I frustrated for FSU? Absolutely. I have friends that love FSU, are great fans for them, and they have told me to go on a tirade to talk about how this just entire committee has made a huge, huge mistake by leaving them out. And I think it's a mistake leaving them out, but I do understand why they leave them out. And it is that, hey, you've been battered lately. We don't think you belong in this competitive edge part of the season, which is ridiculous, but that's probably the way that they look at it, honestly.
And what's so hypocritical to me is that a lot of the crowd that is being like, well, Bama was the best team, they deserve to get in. Listen, I'm not going to argue with you about this.
Yeah.
That if you're asking me at the current moment in time who's the better team, Alabama or Florida State, I would lean towards Alabama in the trajectory. But that same crowd are the ones that are saying every game matters. The expansion of the playoff is stupid. It's going to take away from the validity on Saturdays that, if a team loses, they're out. Listen, it's the same crowd that's saying that. And again, Alabama lost at home by double digits. Florida State did not. And Florida State beat 2 SEC schools. They scheduled number 5 LSU to begin the year and absolutely mollywopped them. They went into the swamp against a Florida team. And again, now granted, is Florida good? No, but it's still one of the toughest places to play in all of college football. And with their backup quarterback in his first start of the year, they won the game. And they go into the ACC title game with a true freshman quarterback that had only thrown 4 passes all season long against a really stout Louisville front 7, and they still won the game. When all the money was going towards Louisville. Right. Everybody was betting towards Louisville, and that line moved from like a touchdown favorite for Florida State all the way to I think they were only favored by 1 point.
Something like
that. At kickoff. It doesn't matter. Here's the point of all this. It's just like you got to be on one side or the other. I'm so sick of the hypocrisy of people saying the expansion of the playoffs, it's so unnecessary. It's just going to cause more blowouts and all. Like I'm just so sick of it. I'm just so sick of it. FSU, the way their defense was playing, I felt like that they could go in and disrupt a really good Michigan because Michigan's offense isn't as good enough. If FSU played the way they played defense against Louisville, tell me with their backup quarterback that they wouldn't have had an opportunity to win that game.
Yeah.
You can't convince me that they couldn't.
Right, and then, Michigan's got the whole headline with Jim Harbaugh, how they're America's team, and, dude, whatever. Just leave that alone. But the whole entire premise of having the college football playoff is, you want to have the 4 best teams, but the committee probably looks at it as, okay, who are the 4 that we have right now, like in this moment right now that we feel like could maybe make this interesting. And so I don't know. I felt like when the whole Michigan thing went down, I'm not putting blame on the whole, Connor Stallions thing in Michigan, but I think that whoever is with Michigan or has affiliation with Michigan and that votes on this committee needed nothing to do with this voting. Yeah. And I'm not saying that it's going to be a problem, but I think that when you look at the college football playoff moving forward, you're obviously not going to have the 4-team playoff ever again. So how do you improve on that? I think, if anything, there could be more issues next year because then you're going to talk about teams that, things are kind of close for, Liberty. Liberty had a great season, and their coach is talking about, man, if this was the 12 team, then we would be looking great.
They would be that mid-major program that would get in. But I'm not like crying over the 13th and 14th ranked team because more than likely they're not going to have a legitimate shot.
Yeah.
For me, I look at this and the precedent that it sets. I don't like it. You just completely delegitimize an entire Power 5 conference. And when, and it's just like, it was just justice for me. I feel like the SEC bringing in Oklahoma and Texas just completely changed and flipped college football on its head. That's why we have all these, West Coast teams coming to the Big Ten. Like, it's just completely ruining the sport in general. And when it comes down to it, I feel like there needs to be at least 4 conferences, 4 really good, like, Power 4, now that there's going to be no Pac-12. And now that you completely delegitimize the ACC and the ACC champion, it's like if you're a recruit and you're like, I could either go to Missouri or NC State. Let's just say 2 average teams from both conferences. You're going to go to the SEC because you're going to know you're going to have a better shot at postseason play. So congratulations, college football.
You know what,
you just completely delegitimized an entire conference.
I think the way that the committee can kind of get themselves out of a hole, okay, let's just put in one of the teams from the SEC. You know what? Let's just throw someone in there that we know will make some noise, obviously. Nick Saban, the storied team, someone that can come in and lead a team to victory. They're the underdog. They're number 4. They could very well win it. Anybody that's in the playoffs can win it.
Yeah, because I think
mean,
Michigan's a little bit overrated.
Now,
I don't think
didn't-
Michigan's as good and dominant as people think.
I don't know why it feels eerily similar, but wasn't there a year that Ohio State was 4 and then won it all, correct?
Yes,
So
but-
it kind of feels like that, but not
But
completely.
with all due respect, Cardale Jones did go into
Yes.
his conference championship
Yes.
game, which, again, the Big Ten conference championship is the most BS conference because one side of the divisions is super elite and the other side is cupcake.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
he won 59-0 against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I get that argument, but again, we're talking about a quarterback that played for Florida State
Yeah.
that wouldn't be playing in the
No.
college football playoff. That's the point that I make.
Yeah.
I don't like it. And again, we're moving to 12 teams, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But all in all, the way the SEC, in my opinion, ruined college football by making these super conferences and taking away the two best Big 12 programs out of that conference and all this realignment, they started that. I thought it was only justice that they missed the playoffs because of the precedent that they set that every Saturday matters.
So we have a text on our personal text line. I'll just read this off before we go over to CJ Taylor because we're going to shift gears over to Vanderbilt and what was going on with them this year from a player perspective. So looking forward to that. But our old friend Joe Rex wrote, so they should have delegitimized. I've said that wrong. Delegitimized. I'm not going to say it right. I'm just going to keep saying it wrong. A 14 playoff with 5 Power 5 conferences, which means someone will always be delegitimized. Okay? I mean, somebody's always going to be. Look, when a team's left out of the playoffs, when it's not based on a points standings like pro sports, duh.
It's like, Patrick Mahomes goes down the final 2 weeks of the season. Let's just keep the Chiefs out of the playoffs.
There's not going to be.
They're done.
There's not there's not a central division. There's not an Atlantic to look at. There's
It's
not.
so stupid to me.
If you split up the college football landscape into an East versus a West, and then these teams made it, and then these teams made it, that would make more sense.
And it's like FSU struggled in their conference championship against Louisville, but let's not talk about Alabama tied 3-3 with South Florida earlier in this. Let's not talk about that because the beginning of the season doesn't matter.
And
it's all about how you finish.
Committees sound so Southern too, doesn't it? We're gonna get our sweet tea. We're gonna have a good old little barbecue. We're gonna vote on who makes the college football playoff. That just sounds like something that they would do based on how things have gone the last decade or so doing this college football playoff selection. So, anywho, we're going to move on because we have a great conversation coming up with CJ Taylor. He just finished his first year at Vanderbilt. So, Junie, this should be a great perspective after a tough season, but there's optimism for sure.
Yep, CJ Taylor, one of the better players for the Vanderbilt football program, linebacker for the Commodores, will join us next. We're going to talk to him about everything going on with the team, a lot of transfers going out, and what's the future of this Vanderbilt football program under Clark Lee. We will get into that next. Riddle and the reporter, Junie Riddle, Nick Keyser here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in to Riddle and the Reporter here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. We are still trying to get a hold of Vanderbilt linebacker C.J. Taylor, trying to get a hold of him, talking about the Vanderbilt football program, everything that's going on with them. But a disappointing season for the Commodores, Nick, all in all. I mean, I had a lot of high hopes for this team after they went 5-7 the year prior. They really finished strong, beating a Kentucky team on the road, beating Anthony Richardson in Florida, here in Nashville. I mean, it was a really good end of the year last year, and then they come out this year, struggle against Hawaii. They didn't really look as dominant as I thought they should against Alabama, A&M, and then the rest of the way, I mean, they just completely bottomed out.
Yeah, I would say so, and it's not necessarily a good note to end on for sure, but you have to be hopeful for the optimism that there is there in the future. So while we're still waiting on CJ, just looking forward to seeing how Vanderbilt can take advantage of their quote-unquote maybe off-season, Junie, because one thing that I've heard from Clark Lee is he has been slowly chipping away and doing the right things, and he's a bright mind. And even when John Hines made his return to Nashville, he let us know that, you know, he was kind of hanging out and, you know, he had still been around town. And previously, I mean, I'd even heard that he would hang out with Clark and stuff like that. But it's always good to know that that you've got a guy locally that cares about the product that he's trying to put out there on the field. So the type of relationship that our station even has with Vanderbilt, we hope that there is, you know, optimism for some guys coming in. You know, Joe hopped on, you know, and said earlier this week that there is a good source of maybe, you know, some good booster, you know, money coming in.
He said specifically a sports
family. He did say a sports family,
which is very mysterious to me.
It is mysterious, but
it's like I want to play Clue and figure out who's the family.
I respect the reporting by Joe not name dropping. You know, that's very sensitive information, so that is something that you have to take time with, and when the time comes, that will reveal itself. And also, if you know you're here locally, you know, Jared was trying to guess, you know, who it could be. Maybe he got it right, and we're not going to know, but you know, too, that's okay. And you know, for Vanderbilt, they can look at the portal. You know, I've always looked at the transfer portal, and I've said it on this program, as free agency.
Yes.
And they've always, you know, seen people go into the portal that it's going to take about $1 million to grab someone really good that's going to be a good pocket passer for you, that's going to lead your offense. And Vanderbilt, you know, they've been struggling to find someone to lead their program lately. So, and, you know, it's okay if we ended up, you know, not seeing, you know, a prolific player necessarily come in that is, you know, going to catch all the headlines, but they need someone that is on the rise for sure. So I'm just curious to see how Clark responds to being his own defensive coordinator, but also how does he build this team in the quote-unquote offseason, Junie?
Well, I'm glad that Joe came out with the report that they do have a lot of money that they're going to be working with here, because I think that that's the one way that they can really turn this around. I mean, we've been hearing about all the guys that have put their name into the transfer portal. Their top 3 receivers. And, I mean, London Humphreys, that was a huge hit. But then hearing Will Shepard, you know, their number 1 receiver for the last couple of years, he's put his name in. Jaden McGowan, he's gone. All 3 quarterbacks that have, you know, they were kind of going in and out, didn't really stick to one guy. Was supposed to be A.J. Swan, but he wasn't playing very well to begin the year.
Leave. I thought that the quarterbacks would flip over, honestly. I didn't think that they would stay.
But I didn't expect Ken Seals to leave. You know, I thought that they would keep at least one of these guys, but now it's I just don't know how you bounce back. And I like Clark Lee, and a lot of people around here like Clark Lee, and it's really hard to judge a guy and how he's coaching a program when you're at Vanderbilt, you're in the SEC, your academic standards are so much higher than everybody else. It's so hard to get really good athletes in there because of that aspect of the recruiting process for this school.
Yeah.
So, getting all this money coming in and maybe trying to buy in some players and get some talent coming in, maybe this is the new way that they do that. Because, again, in the James Franklin era, how did they build those contending teams?
Yeah.
They lowered those standards academically, so some guys that normally wouldn't get into Vanderbilt could, and then they go and change that, and then they're back to the same old program that they were. So they've got to use the format that is college football today, and using this ability to essentially just pay players to come in and be a part of this program, because I don't see another way out of this.
No, you don't, and that's okay, but it's whatever, and we'll see how well he can recruit. You have a good competition with now Derek Mason. By the way, we have to give a quick shout out over to him. I want to say a few things about that hire, which is a great move by Middle Tennessee to make a hire like that. And I was, very excited to hear the energy that he brought to his press conference. It's the introductory. I mean, just, hey, this is who I am. But that is what encourages me about that program moving forward. And I would say that's going to be something that you're going to have to see improve locally, is how many kids go to a team like Vanderbilt, but also how does Derek Mason utilize that program over there as well, and how does he get players to be attracted to his program? Because here's a perspective that I think most kids that grew up here might have of Vanderbilt. The perception is Vanderbilt's not won a whole lot since I've been playing football, so why would I go there?
And I will say this, covering high school football back in 2022 when we were running the game Blitz on Friday nights, I grew a large understanding of how talented this area truly is. And that's another aspect to this, not only using NIL money and money to get players to want to come here, but also trying to dominate the local recruitment. I mean, there's so many Division I SEC caliber players that are playing right here in Middle Tennessee that Vanderbilt is not taking advantage of. And I feel like if Clark Lee can really get his hand on local kids, getting this money coming in and starting to turn the narrative about this Vanderbilt program over, I think that that's the way that they start to compete again. Because, again, growing up, really, is Vanderbilt that much worse of a program than Kentucky historically, or Missouri, or even years that South Carolina? I mean, there's some years that South Carolina is god-awful. I mean, if Vanderbilt really just goes all in this area and uses their ability to collect money in the NIL, and they completely buy into this new college football that we're living in, why not? Why can they not turn this around and turn this into a solid football program to where they're bowl eligible and maybe, not competing for an SEC championship, I should say, but maybe in that conversation of being in the SEC East at right behind a Georgia or right behind a Tennessee? Like, why can't that be them?
I don't know, and that's a good question. I would be happier just to see some bowl wins, to be honest, with our listeners, is having the bowl appearances. While the bowls are like, yeah, you're not in anything too huge, but it's still postseason play. Tyson Helton had a lot of conversation about that before he went to a few of his first bowl games with Western, when I was up there talking to him about that weekly before they would end up going to these games. They're really happy because think about what that does for some of the guys that they don't get to play football after college.
Yeah.
Some of the seniors or the graduates, that would be their last game ever. So those are some huge games for your program historically. And so I think even looking at the Music City Bowl is one I always loved going to growing up. And so you can make it a special atmosphere. It's not necessarily the college football playoff. It's not, what the BCS used to be a long time ago. But when programs go to a bowl game and it's in a fun city, Dallas is a fun one that, I've seen some games there too. And I mean, look, those are fun atmospheres as well. I went to one bowl game there, and Western played in Dallas the same year that the Preds played in the Cotton Bowl, so that was fun to kind of experience that as well. But I think what you can do for the program is show that you can take a team and make it a positive environment, coaching-wise and on the field-wise, but then also go, you know what, let's make leaders of people through this program, which is something you can still do even though you've only won a couple games. But I think that's the way that you could look at it as well if you are joining a team like Vanderbilt. And they're improving their facilities dramatically. Their football stadium is going to look different. That's going to be a new atmosphere as well. It's a historical place here in Nashville, so I'm excited to see what that looks like as well.
All in all, Vanderbilt is the ultimate underdogs, and we're always pulling for the Commodores to shape up their program, to be competitive, and to try and get into the mix, and especially with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC, it's only going to get harder.
And
so let's hope that they can take advantage. If this allotment of money from this quote-unquote sports family that Joe Rexrode is claiming that they're getting for the NIL collective, which I completely trust Joe Rexrode's reporting on this.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can take advantage and capitalize on that. But
really quickly, sorry, I just
ahead.
wanted to throw out the bowl history for a little bit of Vanderbilt as well for those that are curious at least. Vanderbilt has not been to a bowl game since 2018. The last time they won a bowl game was 2012 against, let's see, they lost, and then they beat North Carolina State.
NC State.
Yep.
Back in 2012 they did? What bowl was that?
That was the Music City Bowl.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Right here in the hometown. So, again, hopefully Vanderbilt can kind of shape things out. We did miss C.J. Taylor today. It happens from time to time. We'll try and reschedule with him to get some more insight on, Vanderbilt and what's going on with the transfer portal and what's the future of this program. So hopefully we can get him on at another time. But coming up next, we're going to put a bow on things, make some weekend picks, Army, Navy, some big games in the NFL, Eagles, Cowboys, and also Titans Monday Night Football in Miami. We're going to give our picks for the weekend to cap things off on the show. You're listening to Riddle and the Reporter. Junior Riddle, Nick Keys are here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Final segment of the day here on Riddle and the Reporter. Judy Riddle, Nick Keyser, Connor Newt behind the glass. It's time for weekend picks here on the show. And what better way to kick it off on the weekend with little to no college football, with the only game that is going to be on. It is Army versus Navy, one of my favorite games of the year. And I know a lot of modern football fans don't think that because of how slow pace and it's a lot of running, not a lot of passing game, but I love it. It is football at its finest.
Absolutely.
It is down to the core of it, to me, how the game should be played.
Yes. And
it is always refreshing to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a great American sport with two great American branches of the military.
And I love like all the men and women in uniform
cadets,
at the game and how passionate they get about it. But at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We're all Americans. And everybody shakes hands and has a beer after
Sean
the game.
McDermott.
I love it. I love this game. I love what it stands for, and I watch it every single year. It is fantastic, and I'm glad that it gets its own weekend. So let's make our picks.
Yeah.
Nick, kick us off. Army, Navy. Army is favored by 2.5 points.
If this was Army and Air Force, I'd have a lot bigger of an issue because my dad is Army, my stepmother is in the Air Force, but my dad and I usually watch this game, and we always cheer for Army, and Army is a 2.5 point favorite. I would like to see Army win this one. It's kind of been back and forth the last couple of years, which has been fun to watch. And so last year they played at the Giants Stadium over there at MetLife, so that was fun. So I love watching these games with my family, but give me Army. I feel like they would be a great winner in this matchup.
Okay, Connor, who you got? Armed Forces Bowl.
I'm going to go Army as well. Listen, I don't know too terribly much about either team. I'm not a Army football savant. But they are favored, and I like their uniforms in this game.
I think the Navy coach got a different job, or he retired, right, last year? I think that's right, because it was his last game last year.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I have no idea. The only time I ever watch these two teams is when they play. I'm gonna be quietly frank. But
all good.
My Uncle Tommy, who's Special Forces over at Fort Campbell, he retired back in 2016.
Nice.
He has always made me root for Army in this game, and I will continue to do so. I think they're the better team and the better branch. So give me Army. Make it 3 for 3. They're going to cover. They're going to win by a field goal. 19-16 Army wins this game. All right, next game, and likely I think the game of the week.
Oh, yeah.
You could argue. Eagles at the Cowboys. Cowboys are favored by 3.5 points. Going to be a big one to decide seeding in the NFC. Nick, who you got?
This is a good game. I'm really pumped for this one, and this could be a clear indication of who the better team would be moving forward and who the MVP might be after a game like this. You never know because of Patrick Mahomes and then Jalen Hurts and also Dak Prescott turning things around. I think he has 22 touchdowns in his last 7 games or something like that.
Dak has been having one of his better seasons.
Dak,
for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think Dak will win MVP, to be honest. I don't think he will, but he is playing that way. He's playing great, but give me the Eagles. I think the Eagles bounce back with the fury. They've not played well the last few weeks, and I think that they'll be motivated on the road as well to kind of start turning things around because they do have 10 wins on the season, right? So should be interesting to see how they approach Dak Prescott on defense as well.
Okay. Who you got, Connor? Cowboys, Eagles.
The Cowboys at home, man, they have not been beaten this year, have they?
They haven't. No. They have not lost at AT&T Stadium since Week 1 last year.
Wow.
Against the Buccaneers, I believe.
Wow.
So it's been a while.
That's my thing. Who have they played at home that's been a worthy challenger other than the Seahawks last week? I don't.
And then last year when they played the Eagles were without Jalen Hurts.
They were without him.
That was with Gardner Minshew, and it was still a shootout kind of game. Yeah.
That's where my head's at. I feel like the Cowboys haven't really been challenged this year by a true contender. So I'm going to go Eagles as well. I think this will really be a defensive battle, I feel like.
Really?
Both defenses are really, really good. But ultimately, I think, the Eagles have more of an explosive offense. I feel like Jalen Hurts is kind of the X factor for Philadelphia.
Yes.
So give me the Eagles.
So give me Cowboys on the money line. I think the Cowboys win, but with the hook, the 3.5, I would put the Eagles on the spread. So give me the Eagles on the spread, the plus 3.5, but I think the Cowboys win this game outright. All right, final game of the weekend. It is our game right here in town. Going to be played in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. Titans plus 13.5 against the Dolphins on the road on Monday Night Football. Nick, what do you think? Do you like the Titans with the points? Is this a game?
No.
Vrabel gets the boys up. They cover. What do we think?
There's not going to be a Vrabel special, so don't worry about that. Give me the Dolphins and Tyreek Hill. I agree with Derek Mason, 200-yard game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a called shot. 200-yard gain?
At least.
Okay.
I think he's going to toast the Titans defense. Connor, how about you?
At least we
Quickly.
can go to bed early.
Yeah.
What do I usually say about the Titans when we have odds like this?
We know what you say. Go ahead.
The Titans are going to tighten. They're not going to tighten this time. It's not going to be close. It's not going to be pretty.
I was like, are you really going to pick them on the point spread?
It's not going to be pretty. I can't see the Titans scoring over 10 points. So, I mean, give me the Dolphins. I'll say 31-10.
All right.
Listen, I really want to pick the Titans. I think this is a lot of points to be playing with. But offense, defense, just the way these two teams match up, Miami's going to get a lot of pressure on Will Levis. We know that they can stop the run. Look at that injury report, because if they got Wilkins and Jerome Baker in there, it's going to make it even harder for Derrick Henry and company to get the ground game going.
Yep.
And this secondary against Tyreek Hill and Tua, my goodness. Yep, make it 3 for 3. Dolphins big. It's going to be a tough stretch down the rest of the season for the Titans. A lot of tough games going, but all in all, hopefully it turns into a good draft pick.
And stay safe out there, folks. It's supposed to be stormy out there. Just want to throw that out there. So be safe this weekend, and we'll see how the Titans do Monday.
All in all, Predators take on the Toronto Maple Leafs right here on 102.5 The Game. Pre-game kicks off at 5 p.m., but that's all the time that we have. Riddle the Reporter, we are out.